So I remember sharing this in the very first expansion training, and I don't think I've talked about it since. As women here, because Ryan's not here, you'll know that experience, I think, of when you lean in to put like eyeliner on or mascara, like, and you're leaning into the mirror, and there's a kind of like, there's an intensity as you're like doing something on your eyes or your face. What we often do is we hold our breath while we do that. I don't know if any of you have ever noticed that, but like when you're doing something with that much concentration and detail, and that's why I can think about it, like for eyeliner, some people even do it with lipstick or lip liner, right? Is we hold our breath. So it's this process of, can you do something that requires that much intense concentration and still keep breathing, right? And that's how I approach the tech stuff, because sometimes like I just can't figure it out. Sometimes I need a lot of intensity to focus to see if I can find a workaround or something. And what I do when I'm doing that is I just focus on my breath. So just as a little thing to think about next time you're doing something either that requires, small detailed work, or just something as simple as putting something on your face, notice if you're holding your breath. And it's a really nice practice to actually do something like that while breathing. You'll feel the difference in your belly if you are inclined to hold your breath while doing that. Does that make sense to some of you at least? Yeah. So just try that out. For me, that was a big shift in terms of being able to then be with other experiences that were difficult or intense or required a big focus for me. And obviously putting on lipstick and eyeliner is not probably the same as trying to figure out a tech problem, but our bodies seem to respond to it in the same way, right? So just a little practice, a little kind of something to think about. And try the next time you're doing something like that. So let's just begin by opening the space and acknowledging the presence of our ancestors and also the Indigenous people who have supported this land and loved this land and cultivated the land that we are on, and how they still cherish it and care for it. The waterways, the land, the plants and the animals, and all that inhabit it and utilize it and benefit from the lands that we walk upon and we rest and we play on. And just acknowledging the presence of the Indigenous people in the places where you currently are. So today we are going to be closing the expansion training level 1. And we're going to be doing that with experimenting and exploring a little bit of embodied sacred geometry. And some of you, I know, will know about the Merkaba, and we're going to be bringing in the Merkaba, which is a sacred geometric vehicle for transporting our like big soul presence we can. Now, we're going to be doing it in a very embodied way, and we're not actually going to be journeying, but we're going to be experiencing our Merkaba structure and playing with the idea of setting ourselves up to journey if that feels right for us. Okay. So I don't do that in a group setting because I think firstly we want to be able to practice how to embody it first. So to go straight from embodiment to journeying in this with the sacred geometry, I think I would prefer to either do that one-on-one or, so that there was a lot more safety, or just that you get to practice it a bit more. And also that, to actually be able to understand this from a embodied perspective, that you can actually experience this in an embodied way. Okay, so it's I'll talk you through as I go, and I'll first talk you through the slides, and things will become a little bit more clear. We all right with proceeding? Everyone okay with that? Yep. Okay, lovely. So I shall share my screen. Give me a moment. Ooh. Okay. That's all right. So let's make this bigger. Okay, and we'll just, oh yes, okay. So we're in module 7, journeying and meditating with sacred geometry. So the word Merkaba is from 18th dynasty Egypt, or dynasty Egypt, which spanned approximately 250 years. That was from our 1549 to 1292 BC, so a very long time ago. Several of Egypt's most famous pharaohs were from this period, and that includes Tutankhamun, Hatshepsut, which was the female pharaoh, and Akhenaten and his wife Nefertiti. It's not the same Nefertiti that's the famous person, but Akhenaten was the very first pharaoh who, well, firstly, he moved the center of, I was going to say parliament, but it's, what is it? It's like government, I think. Center of government. He moved actually into central Egypt, out in the desert, and created a new capital city, if you like. So he moved it from Luxor and from the Valley of the Kings, because he actually was the very first pharaoh who was talking about one God only. So he it didn't last, and the Egyptians didn't like it, and he wasn't very successful, but he really did represent a pivot in Egyptian religious life and secular life, by his attempt to make this kind of break from the past and the break from all of the multiple gods to just one God, which was the Ra, right, the god of light. So he still kept all of those icons and structures, but he kind of tried to centralize things with, as I say, not successfully, but he's well known for his failure, I guess. So, if you're interested in that, he's certainly an interesting character. And Hatshepsut, her temple is still in the Valley of the Kings, and it unfortunately was the scene of that massacre many years ago now, probably, 30, 40 years ago? I don't know, it's quite a long time ago, at least 30 years ago. But she was the only, first and only female pharaoh. So the meaning of Merkaba can be broken down into 3 syllables: Mer, which means rotating fields of light, and Ka, which is spirit or soul, and Ba, body. In Hebrew, Merkaba means chariot. Okay, so that actually has a word, has a meaning. What if we break it down? We could define it as the spirit or energy body surrounded by counter-rotating fields of light, transporting spirit and consciousness from one dimension to another. So if we were to break down those syllables into and really expand them into their fullest meaning, that's what we get. In an energy spirit body surrounded by counter-rotating fields of light, Mer, transporting spirit or consciousness, Ka, from one dimension to another, body. Okay, so this idea of moving from spirit to body is a movement from dimensions. Okay. So to go on with a little bit more understanding of the Merkaba, it's actually 2 star tetrahedrons. One points up to the heavens, channeling energy down from the universe, to the, sorry, up the here, channeling energy down from the universe to the earth plane, right? So hang on a sec, what's going here? Sorry, one points up to the, I've written that down wrong, that's why. One points up to the heavens. Oh yes, channeling energy down from the universe to the earth plane, and the other points downwards, drawing the energy up from the earth below, right? So it's drawing it from the point, okay? Now, what we also can say is that each of these tetrahedrons, the top or upward pointing tetrahedron is directed, directed towards the heavens, channeling energy down from the universe to the earth plane. And it holds the energetic aspects of the divine masculine or the sacred masculine, and it rotates clockwise. And the downward or the bottom pointing tetrahedron draws energy up from the earth and below to the heavens and holds the energetic aspects of the divine or the sacred feminine, and it rotates counterclockwise. All right. So we'll give you some better ways of imagining that or visualizing that. So just stay with me. So your Merkaba is your light body vehicle. They sometimes call it the Adam Kadmon light body. Okay, so it's like the original blueprint for man or human. That's where it comes from. Your Merkaba is your light body vehicle and is the key to understanding how to move from one dimension or level to another. It's the divine light vehicle supposedly used by ascended masters to connect with and reach those in tune with the higher realms. When this shape is activated around your body, you are in a place of complete protection, with the surrounding energy being generated from pure divine love. Okay, you can see in that diagram, we've got the top one going clockwise. See that? Just look at that top one, it's going clockwise. And if you look at the bottom one there, it's going counterclockwise. All right. So just get a sense of this is what, there's a few different diagrams that will show you how this works. But this one here is quite a nice, easy one to see. The top rotating clockwise, the bottom counterclockwise. Okay, so I've kind of reproduced that one again, just in a slightly different color, really. Yeah, so I've covered that one. Now here, this is another way of seeing it. So if you can, I was going to say, so it's believed with practice, if you use the energy and shape visualization of a Merkaba, you can activate an energy field around you, which is capable of carrying your consciousness directly to higher realms. So that's the understanding, okay? So firstly, you can do something like holding a Merkaba. So you can get that in, just like a little thing to hang from a pendant. You can get little Merkabas that do that, and you can actually hang them on a necklace. You can get slightly bigger ones to hold. And it is just as effective to use a drawing of the Merkaba to focus on. So I'll make sure that you get these PDFs, this slide PDF, and you could always print out one of these or more of these images that I've got here, cut them out, put them around yourself, hold them in your lap as you're seated, to actually help you focus on what you're doing, all right? And this is a way to create an embodied gridding of your Merkaba, all right? So that's what we're going to be doing a little fun little meditation today, and then we're actually going to see how we can actually hold that as a Merkaba as we do it together, okay? So the Merkaba, the intention of working with the Merkaba is for protection, harmony, and universal balance between the sacred feminine and the sacred masculine, okay? So that's all the slides. I'll just show you the images again so that you have clarity. Okay, so there's that one, which I think is a really quite a clear one. And then this one here also I think is quite helpful because you're actually seeing yourself inside it. You see there how you're actually sitting on the longest base of the upward pointing tetrahedron. See how that is? And then the base of the downward pointing tetrahedron is actually pretty much around the back of your heart. That's how I feel it and sense it, is around the back of your heart is the top, is the base of the top of the bottom pointing one, and you're sitting on the base of the upward pointing tetrahedron. All right, so I'm going to stop the share now. Check any questions, and then I'm actually going to teach you how to do this. So just a moment. There we go. Okay, so I'm not expecting you to have process questions at the moment, but something might have come up for you even just looking at that, or you may have experience also working with that, or you might just want to check in something so far. So is there anything anyone wants to check in? You're still all curious? Yeah, okay, great. All right, so the way we're going to do this is I'm going to teach you a meditation that I have been using that kind of almost spontaneously will set your Merkaba with a bit of intention behind it. You don't actually have to do a lot of work to set your Merkaba doing it this way. But obviously you have the intention and the willingness to set your Merkaba. And what I advise is each time that I direct your attention to the left or to the right, you'll have your eyes closed, but you're going to use a brain spotting technique, which is just to allow your eyes to follow the direction with your eyes closed. Does that make sense to you? So if I said to all of you, close your eyes and allow your eyes to go to the left, which I'll point your left. Does that make sense? And then allow your eyes to go to the right, also with your eyes closed. Does that make sense? Okay, so that's what you can do to really, really amplify this particular practice. Now, before we start, we actually have a chance for all of us to contribute to this meditation. I really like this. I find it's really powerful for everybody when we have, we make our own, contribution to the meditation. So I'd like you to think about a word. So my word is grace. It's a word that you want more of to bring in to your experience or to the group's experience, or to hold. So allow a word to emerge and just pop it in the chat when you have your word, because I will take all of the notes of all of the words down so I can use them in the meditation. Whole joy, zen, lightness, becoming, peace. I need just one word, Sybil, if possible. Can you adjust that a little? Love, okay. We've got two loves, which is fine. I can have both in, unless someone would like to add something else. I just need one word. It's a bit clumsy if I have more than one word. I'm just making sure I have everybody here. Okay, thanks, Sasha. All right, 1, 2, 3, 4. Yes, it won't let me go up. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and myself is 9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So why have I missed one? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I can't scroll up for some reason, but I've got Zen, whole, lightness, becoming joy, peace, love, clarity, and grace. Whose have I missed? Candy, can you just tell me what it is or type it in? It's fine. It's just I can't scroll on this messenger. No, I have joy. I have joy.
It's center.
Center, is it? Okay,
Yeah.
thank you. Thank you. Beautiful. Thanks. Yeah, I just can't scroll up. Okay. Wonderful. Thank you for the clumsiness of that, but bearing with me. I think that center is going to be a little bit confusing.
Stability,
Thank you.
a bit bitter.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, thank you. Okay. So all right. So if you're just to take yourself into a comfortable position, I do not recommend lying down for this one because being seated is kind of how we're doing for the Merkaba. So it's much easier to allow that Merkaba it really sets itself with just a little bit of intention and an eye movement with you. If you're seated, you don't have to be cross-legged, but you can if you wish, but definitely in a comfortable position with a reasonably straight back. My back's nice and straight, and I invite you to do the same as you can. And just feeling into your sits bones and closing your eyes when and if you want to, and you may just take a soft downward looking gaze if that feels better for you to start in that way. And just take 3 comfortable breaths, but just 3 focused, intentional breaths, allowing your breath just to breathe you nice and softly, so you're not actually doing anything more than paying attention to your breath and being with your breath and supporting your breath to be intentional. You can help your breath as much as your breath can help you. So just allow the breath and the breathing to be as it needs to be, and you're going to be really present to those breaths. And as you inhale through your nose, see if you can feel the air passing through your nostrils or moving around your nose. Just notice, see how much of that you can be aware of. How much of that feels like you're inhaling the air, inhaling the scent of the air. And then just letting the breath fall softly out of nose or mouth, it doesn't matter. You want to inhale through the nose, but the exhalation, we're not trying to control it too much, so it's whatever you want or are comfortable with. And as your eyes are closed, or if they're slightly open, your eyes can actually go in the directions that I am talking as I'm discussing. Peace to my left, peace to my right, peace above me, peace below me, peace in front of me, and peace behind me. Love to my left, love to my right, love above me, love below me, love in front of me, and love behind me, love within me, and love all around me. Clarity to my left, clarity to my right, clarity above me, clarity below me, clarity in front of me, clarity behind me, clarity inside me, and clarity outside of me. Stability to my left, stability to my right, stability above me, stability below me, stability in front of me, stability behind me, stability within me, stability all around me. Grace to my left, grace to my right, grace in front of me, grace behind me, grace above me, grace below me, grace in front of me, grace behind me, grace within me, grace without me, and all around me. Lightness to my left, lightness to my right, lightness above me, lightness below me, lightness in front of me, lightness behind me, lightness within me, lightness all around me. Zen to my left, Zen to my right, Zen above me, Zen below me, Zen in front of me, Zen behind me, Zen within me, Zen all around me. Joy to my left, joy to my right, joy above me, joy below me, joy in front of me, joy behind me, joy within me, joy all around me. Becoming to my left, becoming to my right, becoming above me, becoming below me, becoming in front of me, becoming behind me, becoming within me, becoming all around me. Wholeness to my left, wholeness to my right, wholeness above me, wholeness below me, wholeness in front of me, wholeness behind me, wholeness inside of me, and wholeness all around me. Love to my left, love to my right, love above me, love below me, love in front of me, love behind me, love within me, love all around me. Love to my left, love to my right, love above me, love below me, love in front of me, love behind me, love within me, love all around me. Love to my right, love to my left, love below me, love above me, love behind me, love in front of me, love all around me, and love within me. Love to my right, love to my left, love below me, love above me, love behind me, love in front of me, love all around me, and love within me. We'll just take a moment to allow your eyes to travel around those points, saying whichever word that you into yourself that resonates, or that your own word, whichever feels right for you. Just choose a word or choose your word and say it 3 times. Do 3 times around, whichever direction feels right for you, and don't worry about which comes which. Right and left, left and right, up and down, down and up, back and front, front and back, and within and without. They're the points. Just allow your eyes to travel around those points 3 times. And take a big breath in and open your eyes when you're done. Make sure you take some water, take a sip of water or a couple of sips if you need. Okay. So I'm just curious as to if there's any questions, or if anyone had an experience, or anyone wants to check anything out, or share with the group of that meditation. It's based on a Zen, an old Zen meditation, and I've modified it for an embodied practice. And then I've also added the brain spotting points And for me, there's a really felt sense connection to the Merkaba without necessarily traveling. But you can, some of you may be able to actually feel the potentiality of the movement, or even what sometimes I feel like the engine starting up and idling. So sometimes I have that kind of experience of the Merkaba, just the engine starting. So I'm just curious as to what anyone noticed today. Stephanie?
It's hard to sort of describe, but if I were to describe it, to me, it felt like it was just a beautiful way to like anchor in those concepts. They're more, they're more than emotions or adjectives or whatever. They're like,
yes,
they're real ways of being, aren't they? Those words that we, that we came up with, and it was just a beautiful way for me to anchor it in, because the goal is to live a lot more from these kind of words rather than, the Russian craziness of and ups and downs of human life. And it was just, I enjoyed it.
Yeah, I felt the same today. It felt much more anchored for me than necessarily the Merkaba, but I guess it just depends on where we're all at and what we all need. I definitely agree with you.
Well, I think, seeing those images in the PowerPoint helped me visualize as if I was sitting in the Merkaba anyway, without spending a lot of energy, trying to get it all right.
Yeah, and that's the point of it, right? It's like we don't want to spend a lot of energy getting this right. It can do it for us. We have
exactly. You just look at the image and set the intention that it's in the right spot and everything.
Yes.
And then go ahead. So,
yes, I completely agree. I think what I like about this is that we're not trying to make something happen, because we can learn to trust that it can just happen, right? With embodying those principles and intentions, which has got nothing to do with anything else but, as you say, living a good life and an intentional life. Right? It's not about somatics or not about embodiment or anything, but through it all, that's what we're doing. And I find this a very anchoring practice for bringing in certain qualities. And I very specifically took us through love quite a bit more times, because one of the ways of doing this practice is just to work on one per sitting. And I find that much more beneficial than many, to be honest. And per sitting, I say, is a minimum of 3. But if you want to get more benefit of it, do it for 5 minutes or 10 minutes and just do one word, right? And I personally think you'll anchor in a lot more of that quality in 5 or 10 minutes of doing the practice in that way than you would just meditating on love, for example. Okay, that's what I found. So thanks for talking about.
Quite liked moving through the different words. It kind of kept me focused. Like,
right?
It kept me like with it. I stayed with it. Whereas you had just done the one word over and over, I may not have stayed with it.
Definitely not. That, I mean, yeah, exactly. I think that would be a different kind of practice for sure. Yeah. Okay, thanks, Stephanie. I know Beth had you raised a hand, I think.
I did, but you answered my question. So.
Oh, did I? Thank you.
I was just curious as to why you chose love, if that was typical, or if you could choose whatever you wanted.
Yeah. I mean, it's obviously, like I took all the words and kind of put them into an order. But particularly as it had come up twice anyway from 2 people, it made sense to me to choose that one and work with that one more. But I could have chosen anything, but that was just what felt right today anyway. Yeah. Okay, thanks, Beth.
Okay. Thanks.
Is there anyone else who had some comment or question, or Sasha? And then Sybil. Yeah.
Um, I got motion.
Yes.
So I sort of was noticing both directions, and then when we're doing all lefts,
Mhm.
but then when you changed to going right first, it was like I was in a pool, and the water just I had
Yes.
that motion of the water and having to go against
Yeah.
the. So that was interesting because
Yeah.
it was really that I really embodied that feeling, and it was sort of like, whoa, hang on a minute. So my natural when I went to do it myself was to go back to left to try and get balance again because I
Yes.
felt a bit off kilter because it was fighting.
Yes. Right. Yeah, it's the first time I've introduced the opposite direction, so I'm definitely curious as to how that went. I don't know why I did that, but I did. I mean, I deliberately did it, but I don't know why I did it. But so interesting to hear that feedback. Yeah, yeah,
Because I was noticing it before, but it was more subtle. But yeah,
yes.
once that's the direction switched, it was like, hang on, that's not subtle at all.
Yeah,
So
that's what I
yeah,
thought. It was possibly going to be possibly a
yeah,
little well, interesting for some of us anyway. I mean,
yeah,
definitely for me, that's when I felt things start, like turned on, when
yeah.
I was, but it's the first time I've done it that way. Yeah. So I think it was because it was for me, this one was a lot more grounding and embodied and subtle and peaceful because things have not been very peaceful here. And so I wasn't really connecting into the Merkaba, but into the more peaceful part of the meditation. So I think I probably unconsciously wanted to see if changing directions brought me more into the Merkaba. So hopefully it wasn't too disruptive for anybody. But it's certainly
I just thought it was interesting because it
that's
had
right.
been quite a subtle process. So that part of it was just, and it was a subtle change at first. I'm like, did I hear that right, or did I miss something?
Yes, I know. That's why I did it the second time. I thought, oh, you might not have quite gone with that one the first time. Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's just, and it's interesting, like where we're at and how sensitive we are, right? So, for me, all of this stuff is an information, right? As long as your nervous system isn't, completely shot by something, it's just information. And hopefully everything I'm introducing you to is not so disruptive that it's just like what we call a subtle perturbation rather than anything more dramatic than that. Okay, so thanks, Sasha. And Sybil. Yeah,
it's a perfect segue. There was a
Right.
moment where I went from tracking it with my eyes and drawing it to then it just sort of happening. And I think it's probably when you switch directions, probably it did fly me off a little bit out of any sort of making or, tracking it with my eyes. It just started happening. And then I found at the end, as you were getting softer in tone and repeating, it was then that it was like me and the shape together were working together. So you were no longer leading it. It was just now. So it's interesting. So I would agree with you that maybe it was more of a grounding practice for me. I also had a busy day. So it was a grounding. And then that disruption was enough to pull in then the energy.
Yeah. That was my sense.
It's cool.
Yeah,
It's really cool.
yeah, great. Yeah. Anyone else have anything to add? Yes, Lou?
My soul was just ready to take off in that one. It was a bit the opposite. It's fun. I think maybe because I've done a fair bit of work with the Merkaba, but not for a long time. So it was almost like I got in the vehicle and it was like, okay, off we go now. Like I could have just literally slipped straight into the astral realm and I almost fell asleep. Like I had to just kind of stumble over here and lie down. And I was a bit torn for a moment because I was like, well, I don't want to leave. Like I want to be here for the rest of the call. And my soul was like, but I want to be up there. You're finally in the vehicle. Can we go now, please?
Yeah.
And so I've just managed to reconcile it and be like, hey, I can do both at once.
Yeah.
Like doesn't have to be one or the other.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm kind of, there's like a significant part of me that's in this higher dimensional place. And then there's like a good amount of me that's still here too, but I feel very like altered.
Yeah.
not in a bad way, just in
Yeah.
a, that's why I'm just gonna lie here and still be here.
So we might even say that there was some sort of longing that had been unmet for you to be able to go to do that
I
practice.
think so. And I think I've been trying to get it met in other ways that are not effective. And so yeah, it was really noticeable, and it's really highlighted for me that this is something that I need to keep doing over the coming days. Like there's something that my soul and my body really needs from this.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And you know, so just, you know, if any of you are kind of wondering as you come away from this expansion training, is one of the things that that I feel my role here is to introduce you to things, not to necessarily have all of us. I mean, I just don't think it's a very responsible way to have all of us, you know, flying off potentially into astral realms and disappearing from the call, right? Which is why I don't guide you to do that. However, you know, spontaneous things happen, and it's also, and I trust that if that spontaneously happens, it's always been exactly as it's meant to be. But it's a way of kind of reminding yourself of things that perhaps you have let go of or haven't maintained, or that you just need to reconnect with in some way. And I find that, however, whatever practices I introduce that may be the same or similar to something you've done before, they're with the awareness of the nervous system and paying attention in a slightly different way, we usually find something else out new that then we can explore and go into in a different way than we've done before. So that's a really big part of why I teach expansion training the way I teach it. I don't want us all to be having these transcendental experiences and calling it embodiment. Now, you may well go off and have transcendental experiences or transformational experiences and whatever, but I'm just not calling that embodiment, okay? I also think that all of those kinds of experiences are more possible when you have the embodiment piece. It's very much embedded in this Merkaba, which is why I offer it at the end, because it's embedded within it is that as above, so below, or as below, so is above. And if we get our foundations and our base right, then we can actually go higher, okay, and be more safe, and you know, and more intentional about where we want to go and how we want to become. Okay, so Ali, your choice about becoming is a really great word to think about. It's like we get to choose that when we're more embodied and in our bodies. We get more choice about who and what we become. Okay, and all of and that becoming is a bit for me, we are already that, absolutely. And you know, Sybil, you introduced the Vedanta discussion in your post, and I totally resonate with the Vedanta approach. We are already that. It's just that sometimes we've got to do a bit of work, what they call polishing the diamond, if you've heard of that expression. Some of you would be familiar with that. And it's literally scraping off the dirt and the dross and the crust that has come from having the diamond buried in, you know, in sand and dirt for a while, okay? But underneath all of that is still a diamond, right? You have already become, all right? You just need to realize that. That's the Vedanta approach, right? It's the self-realization. This is embedded within all of this embodiment course is that. It's just that you know, it's not the focus of where I teach, but it is within the discovery for you to find by literally removing the bits of yourself as you go through this course. You get to find that you are already that. And you know, maybe in 10 weeks it's maybe not quite enough time, like most of you who have done the course with me, either, you know, Candy's done the 6-month version of the training as well. So there's been a longer version, and then there's been obviously repeated journeys through this. And, you know, and the more that people do work with me, more of that becomes more obvious, right? So I, you know, the embodiment is just one part of the piece, but it's an essential part of the piece that often gets lost, particularly in our culture, in our society. It's the thing that we find hardest to stay with, because we are looking for ways to escape, right? So that's the point of this training, is to really help you anchor into yourself so that you can realize yourself, realize the self, as they call it. Okay. So now I'm just going to open things up. We've got basically an hour to be with each other, to feedback with, you know, with any questions, with any awarenesses, with anything that you would like to know about this work, or your to check in with me about any nervous system stuff. Sometimes people are curious about nervous system dynamics between themselves and others, and certainly we could, you know, unpack some of that if someone has got something that they're aware of, and I can help maybe bring that to light. So that could be something. So nervous systems in relationship with other nervous systems. And that, you know, doesn't always have to be people to people, but that's, you know, that's usually where the, you know, that's usually where the tension is, right? More than anywhere else. That's where the tension is. So that's why I say it that way. But, you know, it could be in relationship, for example, to a place, right? We may have, you know, but as long as we can kind of sense the nervous system response to of the other, right? So it needs to have some kind of reciprocity in it to be able to observe it a bit more clearly in this kind of context. Yeah, so I don't know if anything's sparked for anybody at this point of time, but I know that you'll spark off each other if you're not sure. So it just takes really one person to begin, and we'll be away. Candy?
I don't really know what's happening. Something was triggered for me, and there was a lot of loud noises outside, and it really startled me because I was in that really, I don't know, zen kind of place, and it really rattled me, and I had to get up and check. And it's just a tradie outside who's throwing a whole lot of, I don't know, doing something.
Right.
But it sounded like he was coming through my gate, so I had to check, but it was just the neighbour. And I was like, okay. And then I found it really hard to come back, and then really don't know what's happened, but
Yeah.
something's
Yeah.
stirred up, and I don't really know what's happening.
Okay. My guess, and this is just, we'll just start with this, even if I'm not right, is boundaries. Okay. You know, you were in quite a maybe open space in terms of, you know, your heart and energy field. You're quite open, and someone's intruded within that, and, you know, probably felt like someone was really like coming in through your window, you know, like not just through your gate. Does that sound like that's possible? Yeah. Okay. So I'm sure that you probably, but I'm just going to remind you, looked around. Okay, I'm sure that was your first port of call, right? Yeah. So you want to look around and find an object as you look around that you feel represents a certain safety to you. Can you do that? Have you found something and you're with that thing? Right. Okay. Now just stay with it and just see what comes up. What's happening now in your body? You stay with that.
find it really hard to be with my body.
Yeah. So you might have jumped out of your body. You might not be back in. Okay. I remember seeing that a lot in Egypt when I was, on these kind of spiritual tours. So I'm going to ask everybody here in the group to really connect to their body, and particularly just choose a part of your body. You don't have to like be super, I've just got everywhere in my body all organized. Just just be willing just to notice a part of your body wholly and fully. It could be your inside your body, like I taught you last week, was the bones and the fluid and the muscles. It's really helpful if you can get in there. Yeah. And what about you, Candy? Is there can you go into any of those, like muscles or fascia or skin? Is that any of those possible?
I can connect to my feet at this
Okay.
point.
Perfect. So let's just stay with your feet. And if anybody else feels like they want to join Candy in their feet, they don't have to, but if they feel like they want to, if you feel like you do, just go to your feet. And everyone so we're just employing the group field just to stay with their body, because their nervous system gets to show your nervous system it's safe to be with their bodies. Okay, you don't have to do anything, Candy. Come in and out of your feet if you want, right? Don't force yourself to stay. I've asked the others to try and stay in their body, but again, that's not requirement. But you in particular, just touch in and touch out. Let there be a little bit of a rhythm of, yep, I'm in, and yep, I'm out. Yep, I'm in, or I'm in one toe. Yeah, it's better. Anything you want to tell me is happening?
I can just be with the skin on the outside of one toe at this point.
Perfect. Yeah.
Just touch the outside of it. That's all.
Yeah, I think you've had a bit of a fright and you left your body. That's what I think's happened. Yeah. Right. So is it okay with you, and really check in if it's okay with you right now, if I come and just do a little bit of intentional touch, and you can choose the place as well, like it might be shoulder, for example, or back of the heart, or hand, or elbow, or foot, right? And it's only if that can feel potentially safe as well and helpful, right? It's going to make you jump, and we can try it. And if it makes you leap out of your body, then it's a definite no, right? So does that feel like something you want to try?
Yeah, my shoulder feels.
Shoulder feels good. Yeah, that was my feeling. And your right shoulder? Okay. All right. So I'm just going to lightly be with your shoulder, and we'll just see how that is for you. Everyone else just stay with their own feet. That's all. I'm just going to support Candy's shoulder. You're still here? You're still with us? Yeah. You aware of anything you need now? Or feel inclined to want to do?
Drink of water.
Have some too. I saw you holding your heart, but I didn't know that you've got a fright. can be very alarming for something like that to happen when you're in meditation.
Conveniently, they're gone now.
Yes. You know, and we can just say it's like they're just showing us something, right? Yeah. Yeah. All right, Tara, thank you. Okay. Can you, are you aware of more of your feet or that now, Candy? Or able to be with more of your feet?
Yes, I think I can be with a foot now.
Yep. Yep.
Although 1.5 feet.
Yeah, don't push yourself, don't hurry yourself, because your body, it will all come back in time, but a little bit of support is always more preferable. Yeah.
I do feel more here now.
Yeah. 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 And, you know, like the Merkaba, so it's, you know, like it's really interesting. And so I said it even without not really 100% thinking about it, but I supported quite a few people in Egypt to come back into their bodies after they left them behind in gateways and all sorts of places. And and it's interesting that that was in Egypt, and here we are working with the Merkaba, which is, you know, it's an Egyptian tool. Okay. So there's something in that, right? There's some kind of energetic power in this tool and in the practice that you know is, and you know it connects into the power that is in Egypt. All right, so we don't want to minimize really the potential power that exists in just even the tools that you know that we're playing with here, right? But it's not just, you know, the tool itself is not a problem. It's just that you left your body because something happened, all right? Yeah. Now, the reason I often, I'm very grateful to an experience I had when I was in my very first Vipassana retreat, and I've told you about it, but I left my body, and I was in it's a beautiful meditation I was doing, and I accidentally left my body and had a wonderful time until I realized I probably wasn't meant to be leaving my body, and called it back in, and it didn't come back in. It came several meters behind me. And because when I went to, you know, the teacher to try and get some help, they had no understanding about out-of-body experiences or anything like that, because they just say you're not, they just turn around and say you're not allowed to do that here. You're like, well, it just happened. Like, you know, that would be like me saying to you, Candy, you're not allowed to leave your body after someone, you know, like does that, right? So I had to figure out how to get back in myself, and well, I actually had to figure out what it was myself first, truly, because I just shook for 24 hours. Now, then eventually I did come back in. It took 24 hours. I didn't sleep. It was pretty scary. But then what that did, that one experience that happened like that for me, set me up to be able to help other people and to help recognize when other people were in that state. It's never happened to me ever since in a alarming way. I know we all leave our bodies at different times, right? But in a particularly alarming way, it's never happened like that, and certainly not so clear in terms of like landing behind me. But it meant that I now know, right, and can and support people to come back in, right? And a lot of my life experience has been just one time, so that I don't know if any of you have ever noticed that about yourself. It's like, well, I've done that once, but it's never happened again. I think that's when you're there to help others with that experience, right? So it's definitely connected to that Egyptian experience. Candy, have you ever felt like you had some interest or connection to Egypt?
Not particularly, but just what you're sharing kind of maybe rings true with some of those fears that I had coming up in England around like going into that altered state and fear of not being able to come back. So
Yes, yeah.
I don't know, that just kind of and coming back to the boundary thing, that's kind of where that
Yes.
resonates for me. Maybe there's a fear
That's
of
right.
what if I can't get back. So
Yeah. And so now you know that experience and how it goes, right?
mm,
Right. And it's you literally you just have to you just do it literally one body part at a time.
mm,
So I also did I did a training with Peter Levine, and it was a training to support people who had altered states experiences and out of body experiences and stuff. It was a different kind of thing. And the practice that he introduced us to do, my instructor didn't let me go where it was naturally felt right for me to go. So this is the really important thing, why we have to follow the nervous system as well as keep things safe. And so my nervous system kept needing to stay a bit longer with something and then come out. You know, that thing I was asking you to just find your rhythm and just dip in and dip out. Well, she got a little bit too controlly. And when the practice ended, and I kept saying, no, I'm fine. I kind of need to just drop into this a little bit deeper than what you think. Like I could converse with her at 2 levels. But she pulled me out, and it was very interesting. So this is, like what had happened is that I had heart from my knees down was still in an altered state. Okay, it was actually in a different realm from knees down. Now, what alerted me to that was when I went back into the training room at lunchtime, after lunch, and suddenly I didn't want anybody sitting next to me. I was pissed off when anybody came anywhere near me. I was literally, if I wasn't so worried about being socially appropriate, I would have literally gone, fuck off, everybody, get away from me. I literally had to shake people off, and I went to the back of the room and stood at the back of the thing right at the open doors. I couldn't, and I was irritated and irritable. Now that's actually a sign you're not fully in your body, right? So it's not the behavior, because I was like, what's going on? And then I was like, I'm really irritated. Really, I'm like, what am I irritated about? Like, it's the manifestation is I want more space, but actually the irritation was the clue, right? And that was the clue that I wasn't fully in my body. And so I was having those kinds of reactions. It had nothing to do with really anybody sitting next to me. That was just the symptom to alert me to my irritation, right? And the irritation was the guide to alerting me to the fact that I was still partly not in my body. I was literally left in another realm. Okay. So that's how we track that stuff, right? Is don't pay too much attention to the symptom, i.e., the neighbor or the noise, right? None of that's like it's just guiding you in to what's really happening, right? And then that's why we're able to quite easily get to that point where you're out of your body, right? It wasn't just boundaries; there was a boundary breach, and that had taken you out of your body. So it wasn't about restoring boundaries. It was about helping you back into your body. To see that that's, like it's like, okay, is it boundaries? And oh no, it's not. You're out of your body.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks for being vulnerable enough to let us know that you were having some trouble. How are you going with those feet?
Yeah, I feel okay now. I can feel my slippers.
Good. Excellent. Good job.
Thanks.
Okay, is anyone else?
Well, I'll follow up with that. Irritation and annoyance, things that aren't usually part of our everyday. Can you speak more into the nervous system of then?
Yeah, I mean, look, that's just
What
that's a sympathetic reaction, right?
Yeah, right.
Yeah, and it's you know, I mean, I've got a fair amount of sympathetic energy, but there was no reason for that to be flying around at that point, right? It
Right.
just like wasn't.
Right.
It was totally out of context. And so, you know, it's very easy for us to make a story around, oh, you know, like, you know, I'm at fault, can't contain my emotions, or what's, you know, whatever. But actually, if we just take it at its essence of, here is, you know, a sympathetic charge, and, you know, with Candy, there was probably a lot of sympathetic energy there,
Mhm.
which had caused the flight, and then and then it had probably, like, that had then triggered the distress, right? So this kind of the distress in a way is almost trying to actually change your state. It
Mhm.
might not necessarily know how to do that, but if you think about it, it is almost a call for ventral support,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
So although Candy's system couldn't change her state, it couldn't even take her into freeze, right? It's like,
Right.
it just couldn't. There was just, like, I mean, it probably would have eventually gone somewhere, right?
Mhm.
But really, those tears were really were saying, I can't change my state. I'm trying to
Mhm.
change it. I don't really know what to do. So can somebody come in and help?
Mhm. When we're on our own though, and we have that, and it is like, because that is exactly where I've been going lately. It's like, this is maybe a revisit to something that I thought that I have done a pretty good job of working through that trigger or that wound. And
Mhm.
it seems at such a low level that this experience is not enough to make me feel this way. And yet up it comes. And that's exactly what I've been thinking lately. This is not actually, yes, I know how to regulate and come back down, but it's less about that. It's more that there's an unfinished, it's actually
Yes.
asking me to attend to it. Like, it's
Yes, that's right. Yes.
extraordinarily coming up in a bizarre situation
Yeah.
for me to attend to it
Yes,
now.
because regulating isn't healing. And that's exactly
Right.
what you're talking about. So
Correct.
any kind of emphasis on regulation is not actually going to support the healing of a nervous system state or response
Mhm.
or pattern, right? Because there's a variety of different things that might happen in the nervous system. So obviously we need to be able to know how to regulate and to restore regulation. And when everything is too much, you just focus on regulation. You don't need to work through the pattern or the behavior or the state. That's not necessarily the safest thing to do when it's too much, right?
Mhm.
You just want to regulate or be supported to regulate.
Mhm.
But when there's capacity, which is what the idea of, like, being able to expand your capacity, that is for healing.
Mhm.
Okay. And that's when you drop into those states that perhaps you haven't been able to be with before, right? So that's why they come up and you're like, there's no way and I mean, that's how I've spotted when people have been putting their stuff on me for me to process. Because
Yeah.
I'm like, I wouldn't normally respond like you. Like, I always notice that when somebody's putting their you know, like, I'm not talking about in client situations, I'm talking about, like, I'm out in a group or in meditation group or something. And
Mhm.
suddenly, like, somebody might talk about something that, you know, was a distressing event or even a traumatic event in their life. But they're saying, oh, I'm all over that now. And none of that doesn't bother me anymore. And I'm sitting there crying. I'm like, that is not my normal response to hearing
Mhm.
about a traumatic event. I mean, I'm
Mhm.
pretty okay with being with somebody with that. And why am I crying? Oh, because they're actually denying they're still hurt by it. They're not hurt by it.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
it's those little triggers of when you have unusual behavior, knowing your own
Mhm.
behavior and then
Right.
knowing it's unusual
Mhm.
or disproportionate, as you said, Sybil, right? It's like,
Mhm.
this is not really proportionate to how I would normally be. Here is a gift.
Mhm.
And it definitely indicates then you have the capacity to actually drop a little deeper into that state of irritation and just feel it, right? It's not about making it better or making or changing it in any way, because really below the irritation is just sympathetic energy that wants to be felt. The sympathetic energy expands the system. Okay, that's what expands the system. That's what's hardest for us to be with. And that's what, we will often then drop back into freeze once we feel a little bit of sympathetic juice. This is partly why I've introduced you to the Merkaba, right? It's a little bit of juice, right? But we've just done it in a different context. But all of these
Right.
ways, it's a little bit of an engine rev.
Yeah, I
And
was going to say
how much-
accelerator.
That's right. And how much can your nervous system be with that accelerator,
Yeah.
or you need to take it back down?
Mm.
Okay. And so this was just a little titration of that
Mhm.
mobilization energy, right? Don't need to take you into a state where you're all revving like Ferraris.
Mhm.
Yeah. Does that answer your question,
Nice.
Sybil?
Yeah, it's awesome. Yeah.
Anyone else? Now's your chance if you've got things you want to ask.
I just want to extend on that a little bit, if that's all right.
Sure.
Hearing you talk with Candy and Sybil, I'm wondering whether, like, as I've mentioned to you before, Raquel, whenever I exert myself and I'm at my physical limit,
Yes.
I get really irritable and
Yes.
start snapping at people around me.
Yeah. And that's very, very not like you, right?
No. When I'm sitting and calm and like, I'm just so easyggoing most of the time.
Yes.
But without fail, every time I exert myself,
Yes.
and I have to push my body out of its comfort zone, then I get really cranky.
Yeah.
And I'm just wondering whether this is the same thing.
It is. And it's a really good invitation for you to not make a big story about the irritation and let it be a story about mobilization. That at the moment, your system is patterned into the moment you get a little bit of mobilization in the physical body, your system is patterned into going to irritation because of the mobilization. And so if you can just make less of a story about it and say, oh, this is just telling me I'm mobilizing my body, right? And not going into the, I need to stop because I'm getting irritated, right? Use other signals to tell you when to stop. So I'm not saying override, I'm just saying override the irritation and see what happens. Now, if that escalates into frustration, still might not be anything wrong, but it might be enough to say, well, okay, pull back now because I've seen that escalation. And then you practice that for a bit of waiting till it gets to, and then you'll find that your bandwidth between irritation and frustration starts to widen. So you might get the irritation just as soon, let's say, or maybe not, but then there might be a longer period of time before you notice the frustration, and that's the time then to stop again. So what you're doing is you're increasing your bandwidth, expanding your capacity to be with sympathetic energy. And then after a while that would move.
So confusing. Yeah, I find like when I'm in the shower, for example, when I start to get irritated, I feel like I get irritated because I'm frustrated, but that, like, I'm not sure which is first, which is.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm just using those as an example, like
Yeah.
that you might, frustration might come for you before irritation.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I think it's partly frustration because I can't get my body to do what it needs.
Yes, that's right.
And then I also lose my words.
Yes, yes. So all of that is happening just because there's a lot of or more mobilization in your body than you're used to,
Yep.
and it's pushing you outside of your window of capacity. It doesn't mean, though, that it's inherently a danger to you,
Sure.
right? It does mean that you're going to have to tolerate a little bit of, oh, this feels a bit, and then you have to be able to check in as like, well, can I be with this even though I'm not being like myself? Because that's when the story comes in. And I know that's a big story of, I want to be like my best self around others, right? So here I think is your bit of learning is like, can you be with a little bit more of that activation, knowing you're not going to be quite your best self, quite your desired best self, but it's going to eventually take you to the place you need to be.
Mm.
Right. So for an example, last night I reached out to my friends who I'm looking for the dogs. I did not want to be the person on their honeymoon saying, I'm struggling. Right. I did not want to be that person. I don't want to be a failed friend. I don't want to be saying, it's not working for me, and I'm sorry, I'm not a very good friend. I'm not even looking after your dogs, right? I didn't want to be that person. My whole brain was going, well, if you can't look after their dogs properly, they won't want to be your friend, right? Here's all of that, my story going. And I'm like, my reality is that right now, the dogs are proving too much for me. And I reached out and they just gave me a whole list of things that I could do. I'm like, oh, well, that works. Right. But my story was like, all of a sudden I was going to lose my friends because I couldn't even look after their dog and I ruined their honeymoon. Right. So here's that. Can I be with a little bit of that discomfort? And in your case, the discomfort is not showing up as my best self and my desired best self.
Yeah.
Do you see? Now that is uncomfortable in the body as well as in our story. And that's what we're working with. Right? Noticing the story, and that we don't even want to be with the story because that story brings up too much.
All the stuff.
And you get that now? You're feeling it? It's not so complicated now, is it, when we weave that all together?
Yeah.
Right? I mean, it's painful. It's too much. It's a bit of emotion, but it all has its place.
Yeah, I have taken to apologizing to people prior to me doing the efforting.
That's it. You just might say, I just might be a bit irritated right now by doing this, and it's not personal.
Yeah.
I want to get through this. I want to be better at it. And the only way I'm going to do that is to not hide how I'm feeling right now.
If I start snapping at you, ignore me.
Yeah, well, just no, it's
What
not
about you?
No, it's not personal. Exactly. And that I also know that if I keep on doing this, I'll get better at it and my bandwidth will extend and will become less snappy less often. Right? So just bear with me. And they will hopefully even reflect, yes, Sally, even though we've only known you a fairly short time, we know this isn't you. And we know this is hard for you, and we'd like to support you in any way that feels most supportive for you.
Yeah.
What do you need?
Yeah. Usually I get somebody saying, yeah, it happens all the time.
Yes, that's exactly right. They're not even fazed by it. Seen this a million times. Exactly. Yeah. It's only your story about you being your best self and that you're going to lose love, support, regard if you don't show up as the best version of you every single time.
All
Right?
the old stuff.
Yes.
The old stories.
Yeah. So another way, you can reassure yourself is set this Merkaba grid. After that comes up, you don't have to, a story comes up around, oh, here I am. I'm playing out something around wanting somebody to see me in a better way. You can then go away and do that Merkaba and you just set yourself all that love around you.
Yeah.
Okay. So this is another way you can use this practice is to set when you're, oh, I'm missing love. I'm longing for love. I'm longing for connection. You can, pop that in the Merkaba grid.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you. That's very helpful. Very helpful.
Thanks, Ali. It's a great, very practical example of how this this can come up and how we can work through this. Yeah, thank you.
If nobody else wants to have a go, can I talk about something else?
Well, we'll just have a little comeback to you in a bit. Yeah. Mhm. Thank you. Stephanie.
So I was going to talk about something from the video about the narcissist, the social
Yes.
video that he shared in the group about the narcissist. So
Yes.
I hope it's okay to completely change,
Tacks, of course.
even though it's still the same, really,
Yeah.
the same principles about boundaries and stuff. So I watched that video, and I think it's always a little bit, there's that fine line between being understanding that everyone has a reason for their behavior, and not that, but that doesn't excuse their behavior. Right. So that's a fine line that I think that
Agreed.
is difficult to tread.
Yep, it is, especially when people hurt others.
Correct.
I think that's, like for me, that's where the line starts to actually get really clear, is like when their behavior is hurtful. And
Correct.
certainly if their behavior has malicious and intent behind it, I start putting a pretty strong line myself.
Yeah. But even on, if we go right back to when we talk about irritations, what we're talking about, things that trigger us. I'm away with my husband for a couple of days, and we're in close quarters in the hotel room. We're at home together a lot, but he's often out in the bungalow, and
not quite so close.
Correct. And he has these little idiosyncrasies that drive me fucking crazy. Like, they really trigger me.
Yeah.
And I ask him, I try and nicely alert him to that.
Yeah.
It's a really fine line between me, like, taking a deep breath and just dealing with it, just noises and just things like that. He picks at his nails, and it's just little irritant things. And nicely asking him to stop. But he knows, like, he's known for 20 years that I can't stand when he picks his nails, when he's nervous watching the footy or whatever next to me. It drives me nuts. But he continues to do it like he has no awareness around it.
Yeah.
And so, like, that's almost like, at the small end of the scale of the, of the hurtful narcissist that's kind of at the other end of the scale.
Yeah.
And, to what extent, do I continue to just nicely ask, can you please not do that, versus getting irritated and saying, for God's sake, insert number of expletives.
Yeah.
And
So
he rolled his eyes and he's like, well, excuse me for taking up space, and
that's right. That's how he sees it as.
Yeah. And it's like that's a continuous sort of difficult.
So there's a number of layers to that, and I think the first is, even though he has known that this, let's just pick the nail thing, is irritating you for 20 years, when he's doing it, he's not in awareness of that, right? Okay, so that's one of the first things, because, for example, if he were doing it,
absolutely no malicious intent there. That's right.
No, exactly. So there is one thing that we know is, okay, he's heard it for 20 years. But when he moves into that behavior, he's not, in awareness of that. He's moved into, as you say, some form of anxiety or whatever. So, and then the other piece is around you having to control his behavior, right? In terms of that's your response to alerting to him that that's what he's doing, right? So there is one way potential, and I mean, I would go a step further than this, but potentially for any of that, any behaviors like that, one of the things you could say to somebody while they were doing that is like, are you aware you've gone back into that habit again, right? So that rather than can you stop biting your or stop picking your nails? It's, you know, it drives me crazy and you're doing it again, right? There's that way of saying it. And then there's the other way of saying it. Oh, do you know that's what you're doing again? Or are you aware that that's dropped you? But here's the piece that I would suggest for a marriage of 20 years, right? Where you've literally, like, this has been going on for a long time. It's not like 1 or 2 years into a relationship, right? It's actually, oh, so you're going to sit down and watch the footy today? Are you willing to put a Band-Aid on your fingers so that you can actually not tear your nails while you're watching the footy? Right? It's literally that, having that conversation. And if he says, well, no, there's no way I'm doing that, then okay, I need to make some plans around not being in the house while you're doing that, or you need to make a plan to watch the footy. Not like, we need to not be in the same room. So we need to figure this out. We need to figure out a schedule. If it feels too controlling, because that would be a conversation, is like, are you willing to do something like that? And how do you feel with me asking you for that? Because I am asking you to do something that maybe feels a little strange or controlling even. How do you feel about me asking you to do that rather than me complaining when you do it? I
just feel like it's a constant treading of a fine line between.
Yes, but I would say I don't
my
think
sensitivity.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
And his lack of awareness around that,
Yes.
and his lack of understanding, because he's not a sensitive person in many ways. So it's just continuously navigating that. And, it's not just him. Obviously, it's for all of us to navigate the wider world.
You've just hit the nail on the head, Stephanie. It's retraining. It's a bit like what I've had to do with the dogs.
Yeah.
Right. It is this topic of retraining, and it's partly retraining you to know that by you asking for your needs to be met because you're sensitive is not a flaw.
Yeah.
So I think that's really underlying.
I do.
That's what's underlying it, right?
Because there's a shame piece there.
Totally. There's a shame piece there.
Yeah.
And there's a shame piece. I shouldn't be this sensitive.
I'm pathetic.
Exactly.
Soft. I'm
right.
Too sensitive.
Yes. And that's why you're getting his response to you, which is, oh, right, so I can't even exist. He's showing you the shame.
Yeah.
Right. There is that. He's reflecting that back in his response, shame response. Oh, you're just shaming me now for existing because of the way that you're holding that piece around, I'm such a shameful person because I need people to make adjustments for me. Right. Everybody needs special things. Everybody has special diets, special noise issues. And yes, you and your husband have a big contrast. But if you were, to embrace the fact that you have these sensitivities in a way that is not shame inducing, and just say, God, I call myself the princess and the pea, right? So it's whatever, it's like whatever, however you want to say it.
That was one of my favorite stories.
Yes, exactly. I'm like, I just can't help it. I'm like a prince. I know I look robust, but I'm like a princess in the pea. Right?
Yeah.
So it's really embracing that on every level, and frankly, starting with a bit of humor is a good place to start, right? Like you don't end with humor, but it's a good place to start embracing that sensitivity is with a bit of humor.
Yeah.
And men do really well with humor too, as well. Like, if you, oh yeah, I'm doing my princess pea thing again. Sorry. But, but it
he
is.
does respond to humor very much.
Yeah, he does. That's men do. They do. So it's more that you're going to, and so this isn't a story about, flies and honey and vinegar. This is definitely a story about the nervous system shame piece that you two are, and that's where his irritation is coming from. He's like, you've just stirred up shame in me that I didn't even know was here.
Yeah.
That's why he's snapping at you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And just one more little piece that just something that was interesting that I literally watched the narcissist video early this morning. And then afterwards, I've been following Robert F. Kennedy's run for pre-selection for the president in America. And I just watched he did a speech on his foreign policy. And he was talking about how his dad and his uncle taught him about, if you're going to have peace, you actually need to put yourself in the shoes of Russia, for instance, and figure out what is it that they actually want here. And it was just so interesting that I just watched that piece about narcissist and how he sort of said, you need to effectively empathize. I'm using my words now, effectively empathize with a narcissist and find out what is going on for them. And then I watched that thing. And then the other thing that he said that was really interesting was that the government's continuous conversation around combat and around war, and it's not just the war in Ukraine, it's the war on cancer, and it's the war on COVID, and it's the
war of drugs,
war on everything. That then translates to, the domestic violence issues and the gun issues, the violence in schools and all that. And it was just so interesting that he was talking about spiritual concepts, and he said he actually labeled them spiritual concepts. But that I just watched that narcissist video, and then I watched that straight after, and it was just a really real coincidence that I wanted to share.
Yeah. So when I was doing my Islamic studies at uni, I was very interested in looking at peace and reconciliation in Israel-Palestine. And I did a lot of reading on ideas around how, not necessarily political, logistical ideas, but how to literally, facilitate some form of peace and reconciliation. And the most powerful writers I came across said basically what you're talking about here. They said that both parties need to actually recognize that they are one community of suffering. That was their words, not sufferers and not two communities. So it was very, very specific that the move had to be away from us and them, or they being the problem, and and me being the hurt party and them being the perpetrators, right? You had to move away from victim perpetrator model. You had to move away from like two victims and sufferers, and you actually had to move into this space of one community, not necessarily united, but all of them have been slighted and have been hurt, and then the suffering, and then externalize the suffering. So it was so there was certain processes to it. And that's really what you're talking about here with what, Kennedy said, and what the narcissism pieces are, is how can we take those steps to move away from victim perpetrator. So there's that narcissist empath thing, and then moving away from the idea of even both of us being, in some way victim, which is sort of what that guy was saying, in the narcissist video, Vital Mind Psychology guy, is like, see their suffering as well, but then take it one step further, which is like, see you both as sufferers, and then can you take it even a step further and see you both were just participating in this experience that caused suffering for everybody. Right? So things like peace and reconciliation processes, and the Marshall Rosenberg video that I shared with you with the nonviolent communication, compassionate communication. So he succeeded. He was actually brought into a lot of peace and reconciliation talks between African chiefs and African tribes. And he said that once he had got people to each of the chiefs to a point where they were able to state what they needed, he could sort out the whole thing in 20 minutes. So he said, that might take some time, months even, to get people to acknowledge their own needs. But once it got to a point of that kind of solidity, he said it was all done and dusted and sorted in
Yeah.
20 minutes.
Because then you can find a solution from there.
Yeah, well, it was actually both of them were able to recognize each other's hurt.
Yes.
Suffering was actually more than the solution per se, right? It was suddenly that both could see that, because often when let's say when we're a victim, we think that the perpetrator has all the power,
Mhm.
right? So we're thinking from a power perspective. So when you can hear from who you think is the perpetrator has needs, then you might be able to say, okay, so they don't have all the power, right? Here I am, I have the power to grant them something, and here they are, yep, okay, I don't want to feel that they have and that's a bit like your husband is like, he has the power to grant you, cessation of that behavior.
Mm.
Doesn't really, because it's,
Mm.
can't help himself, but he is the only one who can grant you the power of that to stop that behavior as well. There's that piece around, where is that fine line? Because it is true that it's his behavior and he's the only one who can control his behavior. And it's also true he's not doing that deliberately.
Mm.
Right? But when you both are able to acknowledge your own needs and suffering,
Mm.
both of you, then you can find that solution really easily.
And really what all most of us want is to be heard, like genuinely heard anyway.
Yeah. But I love the fact you brought in that, because it literally ties into so many things in life, right? And this is also one of the things I want you to tap into, because there's like, when I watch Marshall Rosenberg and the way that he talks about that the greatest gift anyone can bestow upon you is to ask them to meet your needs.
Mhm.
Right? That just moves mountains in my heart. Like it's literally like, wow, all of those things where we all hold back because we're afraid to ask.
Mm.
And that's a gift that we're actually asking somebody to give something to us. Right? That's a gift. Right? And then we can just drop into being loving humans. Right? We don't again have to pull that in from anywhere. We just are. Great thoughts there, Stephanie, and conversation. Thank you. Yeah. One of the best. Do either of you have anything that you would like to say? No, you're good. What about you, Beth?
Yeah, I'm holding that shame. And it's holding me right back. I had a lot of frustration come up when I was really sinking into the bliss of the meditation.
Mm-hmm.
And then I heard my father do this at my screen door to see if he was going to disturb me with the blower, and then he used the blower anyway, even though I'm there like, this. And so I did the whole mental, like, instead of asking for what I need, I did the whole mental, go away. Oh my God, I can't believe this is happening. Like, and then got so frustrated and irritated that I had to go off camera and let myself have big sook. I was like upset, like the little girl in me that just was like, but you saw me before you chose to disturb me, and it's like, just like not wanting to even talk about it because I live here and I didn't want anyone to know. Like, there's like that layer of it too. I came back, all right, I came back, and so there's this whole like, I'm not gonna show that I'm not my best self right now. Like, this whole thing was, I'm navigating power dynamics with my parents. I feel like that victim's cropping up because they do have the power to do whatever they want, and I'm not going to argue with them on that. Like, but how do I get my needs met? This is a really interesting thing. I'm a student again. I'm living at home again. I'm getting ready to launch again, The whole thing feels kind of like
Yeah.
Groundhog Day.
Mm.
And yeah, so but it's the reality. And I was sitting here really just coming to peace with not hiding. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it was just really like, it was just really disruptive. And because of the boundaries piece, you know, not really having control over what is happening around me. And I mean, we all have that no matter where we live or what's happening on any given day. I'm in the suburbs. It could have been the neighbors if it wasn't him. But yeah, just needing a sanctuary and feeling the absolute ecstasy of reaching one within myself to have it kind of removed was really agonizing.
Mm.
Mm.
You bring up a few things there, Beth, and one of the ones I sensed into a little bit, just a little bit, is that when something goes awry and you can't quite soothe yourself, right? Like you were able to make a choice to have a good cry, but it was like it's that effort we have to make sometimes to actually take a breath, when in fact, because we're programmed to have somebody be with us and regulate us, that's our first programming. And when there isn't someone to do that, then we have to kind of help our program along to do it for ourselves. And there can be a little bit of space in between that can then, cause some emotion to arise that, that is the way then we can soothe ourselves, is through crying. Right. If you release that emotion, then, we'll be able to think. But there are other ways, for example, there are other ways to be able to self-soothe other than getting to that point where just, a big cry is the best way forward.
It was just that he had the blower on for the whole thing.
Yeah.
And so, it wasn't like I could soothe while I couldn't participate. And I wasn't choosing to go and set a boundary with him either.
No.
So I just had to sit in it.
Yeah. Yes. Oh, it's awful when, surrounded by sound, as a intrusion, right? It's very hard.
Mm.
Yeah. And how does it feel to actually be able to kind of like come forward a little bit and say, oh, here I'm kind of naming
much better
things are not going so well? Yeah,
much better.
Yeah,
because the shame is lessened by disclosure.
Yeah.
And so, like, it's not shame if I'm owning it.
Yeah, that's right.
This is my experience, and now I can move on. And that's
And does everybody resonate with that type of experience of, like, something happens where you can't, there's not much you can do about it. You have a reaction to that, and then you hide because you don't want people to see you behaving, or misbehaving or whatever it is, or you don't want people to see you like that. So, but then when you do finally decide to show up and say, oh, I'm just not perfect right now, right? The shame starts to move and go, and nobody has to wear the shame cloak, right? Just kind of comes, it disappears, right?
I mean, who am I truly comparing myself to? Who am I actually trying to impress?
Yeah. Who are you? Who do you think you're supposed to be?
Yeah, it's obviously Dad. Okay, so all right,
just saying.
That's why it was him, and that's why this whole
that's
thing.
Right, it is absolutely. Yeah, and it sounds bypassy to say everything happens for a reason, but like, there is, I would say it's better to say there's an opportunity in everything. Right? It's not that it happens for a reason in the way that we like to say. It's like, here's an opportunity.
Yeah, I agree. I sat there saying, I actually can't insist on making meaning out of this.
Yeah,
that was at
there
the
is
very
no
start.
meaning.
Yeah.
There's no meaning. There's just an opportunity for you to go deeper into yourself if you wish.
The psyche longs to to make meaning. Like if I can just understand why it happened, then I can get over it.
Then I can get over it. Yes.
Yeah.
And because that does work some of the time, right? So it is something to keep going to, because it does work some of the time. When you figure it out, you're like, okay, I can step back now. So it does work some of the time.
Any advice for how to be better at self-soothing? Like, because even though I didn't feel like this was that situation, I could feel the truth of that in my other things that happen. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. It's I think knowing that we are biologically programmed to seek soothing from others first, right? That's the biological sequence. We learn to co-regulate before we learn to self-regulate, right? So when we're distressed, when something shows up, our biology immediately, especially for those of us who missed the right kinds of soothing, this is actually where it really shows up, right? When you miss the right kind of soothing as an infant, our biology calls that in first quite strongly. Will somebody come in and help me? Even if it's say, okay, Beth, let's just breathe together. All right. You're quite capable of doing 3 breaths without somebody being with you, but it actually would be so much nicer if that could happen like that, in terms of that's what your biology is asking for, right? So noticing that and acknowledging that, oh yeah, look, I can't even remember what to do right now, or I don't want to do what I know how to do right now. It's one of those two that happens for most people. Sounds like for you, it's more like I don't want to do it on my own, rather than I don't remember what to do, right? More so, right? So it's that, because your biology is saying, I'm programmed to have somebody with me while I'm doing it, right? So there are a number of ways. One of the ways is that on a practical level, I often get people to get more on, let's say, call it first name basis with their furniture.
Go on.
Right. So you have a relationship with a table and its legs, and it's like, oh, hi, you're here with me. Okay, nice to see you today. You're looking very solid today and very brown. Looking good, right? It's a kind of relationship, so that when something happens and you need something to be with, you just call in that, just come be with me. You might even go over to it, or bring it over to you if you'd even, I mean, you'd obviously have to get up, but like you will have that sense of, no, I'm going to come in and I'm going to put that table right next to me and it's going to be with me. Your body will respond to something being with you, being with something. All right. And especially if you've, have greeted, your furniture as like, hi there, good morning. Good morning, right? You don't have to just say good morning to the beautiful sky and birds, right? You can say good morning to your furniture as well. And it literally could be hello lamp, hello painting, hello birds, hello trees, hello flowers, hello phone, hi pens, right? Like it's all of those sorts of things. So, when you're on your own and living on your own, that because you don't have a lot of co-regulation, you've got your animals and you'll probably look to your animals, but they haven't been super well lately. So co-regulation, you're doing more of that for them rather than the other way around, right?
Yeah.
So make friends with your furniture.
Okay. It's a party here, right? I got plenty of furniture. I'll have a great time.
Yeah.
I can't wait to try it.
Let me know how you go.
I will. Thank you.
You're welcome. Anyone else have any questions?
No, but I think it's good just on that with Beth. Like, I think it's good to just have one self-soothing go-to. Like,
Totally. Yes.
because there's a long list that you've given us.
Yes.
And for me, when Beth said, what can I do to self-soothe? The first thing that popped into my mind, because I love it. Well, there are 2 things actually. One is to grasp my arm.
Yes.
Like a hug.
Yes.
And the other one is the wrap. Like
wrap. Yes.
Wrap.
Wrap
that
one's a great one,
gives you
actually.
feel like a hug.
Yeah.
And you know, our dog's been really anxious because we're away, and someone reminded me of the Thunder shirt, which is basically it's a coat that wraps around nice and tightly for the animal, and it's like a hug, like it
Yes,
works
right.
because
It's
it's
containment.
nervous system. It's containment, exactly. So
Yeah.
you know, I think
Yeah, containment is an excellent go-to. It really is, and we
we
don't
need to just have that one thing though, because we forget. Like when we're in
Yes,
freeze, right? We forget. We don't even think to even do it. But to
Yeah.
have that one thing to say, what can I do to make myself feel better?
Yeah.
And to have that as a go-to, to
Yes.
me.
Most people, that's right. Well, and I did check in with Beth whether hers was more forgetting or resistance to doing, and she probably had a bit of both. But just from what she was saying, she had, you know, she could have, but she kind of like resisted
I get
it
that
some of them. Yeah, which I think we all will do one more than the other, right? But I think that both of them is going on. But totally having like, you could have a shawl just draped on that chair that you say hello to every morning, and that's also your Thunder shirt, right?
Thank you, Stephanie. Yeah, I'm actually gonna get that going.
Yeah,
I'm gonna get that going.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a really good one. And you don't have to do, you know, you don't have, it just sorts your body out. You don't have to think your way to containment or holding, right? The dog doesn't think its way to it. It just does it, right? And it's the same with the shawl or scarf or whatever you're using. Your body will just find its way to settling through feeling it. Yeah.
That's great. Thank you.
So, Ali, you had something. Do you still have something that you wanted to ask?
Not so much a question, I think. My family was here on the weekend.
Mm-hmm.
Sister's up from Dubbo, which is a 9-hour drive away for people who don't understand Australian geographics. We had my brother and his family here as well on Sunday night for dinner. And it's kind of a little bit of a full circle thing from what Steph was saying about the narcissistic stuff. We played a couple of board games, and my brother, being him, he had to have control over every little aspect to it. And the rest of us were just sitting there rolling our eyes. Like, he took the lid of the box from the game to put the tiles in so we could choose them blindly. And every time somebody needed a tile, he would hold out the box and say, "Here, your turn." I'm like, "Matt, really?" So we're all like literally rolling our eyes at him when he literally held the box and refused to let go of it, so we couldn't take it ourselves. So, and then the other game we played, he wasn't actually playing the game, but he was overseeing, and he was reading all the cards out loud to everybody, and his voice was so loud.
So the question is for you, and this is, you know, not something that you can actually answer, but if you could answer it, right, because he probably would never, is, you know, we were talking about what is the underlying need, right? So that when two people in conflict can admit their needs, right? Mm-hmm. So without, you know, you like, it's very difficult to get a narcissist to admit that they have a need, right? So that's not what I'm proposing here. But if you were able to feel into your heart and say, what is the unmet need here behind that behavior?
Yeah.
Right? You know.
Well, yeah, I know that he's got all of the missing pieces that we've just talked about today. And he's got the shame piece, he's got the I'm out of control piece.
Yeah, definitely, exactly. And there's some sort of security he's looking for, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Or certainty, we might even say. Right? Yeah. So I totally agree. There's a big shame piece in there, and there always is with people who have that sort of narcissistic behaviors. even if they're not narcissists, they're always a big shame piece. And frankly, just being human, there's shame everywhere, right? So, you know, we don't even have to label anybody. But so there'll be a shame piece. And then just that behavior is like telling us that he's insecure about something or requiring certainty. We might leave off the whole control thing because that tends to get a bit labely and say, what's going on there? He just wants some certainty, or he just wants to know that things are going to go okay. Oh, he just wants to know that nothing bad is going to happen. Right? And you know, and then you're like, oh, okay, all right, so I can feel more compassionate towards him.
Yeah.
Whatever his behavior is that he's doing, a bit like the nail tearing, I can feel more compassionate towards it.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
And then as soon as you feel more compassionate to somebody else, the boundary of differentiation takes place, right? What happens when there's narcissistic behaviors happening, or even just purely selfish ones, they're trying to draw you into their space and for you to operate where you're putting them as the first priority. That's what happens in those dynamics. If they dissolve that boundary and pull you into them, then you will see the world through their eyes. You will look for needs to be met that are their needs to be met, etc. Right? And you just disappear. Right? That's the problem. That's the dynamic that happens between empaths and narcissists, right? So you disappear, as in Ali, all of your needs disappear. He was obviously in a situation where he was at your home, which broadcasts that you have needs, right? Because you're in a home that has some you know, adaptations, right? So it broadcasts that you have needs, and that would have made him shit his pants, let's say, because he's like, oh my God, what will my needs be met here?
Yeah.
Right? That's what would have been going on underneath all of that. Will my needs be met here? Right? Because Ali's already telling people what she needs because we can see it. But they can't see because he's got health issues going on. They can't see that, right? It's not apparent that he also has needs.
Yeah.
So instead of him saying, because it's very difficult for anybody to be vulnerable about their needs, but particularly people who may be a bit narcissistic, instead of him saying, oh, I have needs too, he's tried to get those needs met by being controlling.
Sure.
Right. And so going past his vulnerability. So it's not the controlling that is getting his needs met. He's just trying to avoid feeling his vulnerability.
Yeah.
So that's what we talked about in the last session about avoiding vulnerability, right? You see how it connects?
Yeah. Totally. That's him all over.
Yeah. So those, whatever behaviors is going on for him that you go, oh God, really? He's avoiding being vulnerable.
Yeah.
So there's your cue. There's your clue and your cue. He's avoiding his vulnerability. So, you know, you could have a choice and, you know, you could, even if you're sitting next to him, just put his hand on his shoulder. It's all fine, Matt. Right? You could. That could be a behavior you could do.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Totally.
Right. Or it could be, we really want you here, Matt. Or we're really glad that you could come. Right? It's literally something that's not going to make him go, oh my God, is there something wrong with me? Because Ali's said something a little bit weird, but it could be as something as it's so good that you could come and be with us all, right?
Yeah.
Helping him come, welcome him back into the fold, right? That's what choosing your language so that we can all be here together and we don't have to worry about who's top dog.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah. Because he also has I'm the youngest child.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
Yeah. Worries. Yeah.
I'm the one that always gets left out.
Yeah, right. We can see that all of that pattern all just like, it's like duck underneath the surface of the water, like the way you're describing it, right? He's got his little legs going 100 miles an hour, right? And that's why he's got all of that health issues going on that we've talked about, right? Lots of sympathetic juice. If you, you know, to put it mildly from anybody's perspective, there's a massive amount of sympathetic energy that's causing him major health issues.
Yeah.
Right. So that's the duck. Right. On the surface, nothing's a problem, but underneath he's swimming like crazy and it's affecting his health.
Yeah.
And he knows it, and there's his vulnerability.
Yeah.
Right. And that's the human vulnerability. It's not just a narcissist vulnerability, that's a human vulnerability. And
Yeah.
that's that, there's that line starting to kind of meander in a different way, right?
And like when he comes out with all these behaviors, a very large part of me wants to pick on him.
That's right.
Because that's his pattern for me, right?
That's right.
That my
Yeah.
whole life, well,
Yeah.
his whole life, he like
Yeah.
all he's done, well, mostly what he's done is pick on me. I was his first literal punching bag.
Yeah.
So I really want to give it back to him. But hearing you talk, I'm like, okay, take a breath.
Yeah, that's right. And this is all about you, Ellie, not about him, right? It's how you feel, and it's not about how you look to anybody else on the outside. This is your process for how you get to feel and live your life.
Yeah.
You get to choose that.
Yeah, you're right.
You know, and it's not just through, oh, I choose to be more Zen, right? It's not that. It's literally like, I choose to ask myself the question, okay, what does he really need here? Or what is he hiding?
Yeah.
You know, that's the choice. I get to choose and stop for a moment and ask myself what's really going on here for them or for me or whatever before I make another step, right?
So, yeah.
Okay. I noticed that we're getting dwindles of people. So we might finish up here quite soon. I do thank you for staying longer. I know I started a little bit later, and then I saw anybody who does want to speak, ask questions. That's what this particular week is for. I just want to let you know, and you can reach out to me if you want some more information, but there is a second part to expansion training. If you want to do expansion training too, we can have the same financial arrangements as what we've done before. So I'm happy to talk to those of you who want to make a different arrangement. So just to assure you that that's the first thing. The second thing I want to say is that there are 2 date options for when we could do expansion training too, if you wanted to do it. And really that was what I'll do is I'll pop a poll in the group, because there's one option that I could fit in before I go away to India if we start in about a month's time. Okay. Or and there may be, half of you want to do one time, half you want to do the other, and I'd be quite open to that. But so there is a potential to start in what we have a nice integration break and then resume again in 4 weeks. Or we can look at starting in February. So I know from a financial perspective, some of you might feel more comfortable with extending that to go into February. By February, I should have expansion training done. Certainly the first part. I haven't thought about the second part yet. So I don't know if I'm going to turn it into a self-paced course, but I think I will. I'm just focusing on expansion training 1, turning that into self-paced. So by February, I will know and maybe even have created a self-paced version of expansion training 2. So that's another option, maybe. Let me tell you what is involved in expansion training 2 briefly, super brief. It is another 10 weeks. It's all live. And we go deeply into two main things. We go into some more shadow work. So we did the shadow of the helper this time round. Then we go into more person. So that was more collective and kind of universal. And then we go into more of the personal shadows. So we've started that today, right? And that's where we would broaden into, but we use some tools like the Enneagram and Myers-Briggs and a few other different tools to help us dive into some of those shadow aspects, right? So what can emerge is some spontaneous awarenesses, like in relationship, but those tools can really kind of help hone our interest, really, like really focus our interest, our attention on certain areas using those tools. So Enneagram I find is really, really helpful to look at some shadow work, because we can actually, the Enneagram tells us when we're under stress, where we go to, and when we're in our best self, where we go to. So although we get a typology, we get also, that also indicates best self under stress. So it ties in with this shadow piece that we've done under the helper, which is definitely we're focused on when we're under stress, how we go down the line, but also when we're in our best self, we obviously go up the line, right? So we're using those same principles, which come from the Enneagram, by the way, that shadow of the helper. But we set our own, we find out our own Enneagram and look at that a little bit more depth. So that's the shadow work that we do, personal shadow work. And then we also do nervous system mapping. I think we have 3 weeks on the nervous system mapping, because there's 3 different maps, and mostly we can get like 1.5 maps done per session, which means that we have another half a session to do some more work on the mapping, as in the impacts of the mapping. Now, the mapping is all about really drilling down, like beyond the frustration and beyond that, into the nervous system state we're in, and then finding ways to get out of the nervous system state. So it ties in things like self-soothing, self-awareness, shifting nervous system states, finding ways to access more ventral nervous system states, which is obviously our place where we're most resilient. And we do that all through that mapping process of, oh, I'm here. How do I get to here? Where I want to be, which is my best self, right? What shift do I need to make in my nervous system? Oh, okay, I need to shift to ventral. And how do I shift to ventral? Oh, this works for me, that works for me. And it's much more than just tools. So we start to then, we seek out, so I've explained a few times that one of the ways that shifts and holds me in ventral is to be invited, welcomed. So I actually now seek out opportunities, situations where I can be invited or welcomed, right? Because I know that just expands me in such a way that it just holds me in ventral. When someone says, oh, we saved a chair for you, for example, right? So it doesn't have to be like a party invitation, but like, yeah, I got invited to a friend's wedding recently. Wow, here's ventral, right? You know, it's because I know that about myself. I know that if somebody makes a space for me, I'm going to just, my body, if I am willing, it will just pop me into ventral. So the mapping process helps us identify stuff like that. It's not just, oh, I need to do this practice to help me get into ventral, for example. Okay. And it also helps us be a lot more aware of the shadow aspects of, oh, yes, okay, when I get frustrated, I get this, and yes, I'm in sympathetic, and then that escalates to X. Oh, that just drops me right into freeze after that, because I can't hold this in. That's what's going on, right? You start to see your pattern more once you map it all out. And as a group, we learn a lot from each other, okay, which is why I like doing it live and why I think there's a huge amount of value doing it live. I've done a lot of those mapping sessions with individual clients, and I've done a lot with groups. And I think people get a lot more out of the group situation because they're learning from each other. And someone will say, oh, yeah, this happens. I'll go, oh, that's me too. Right. And you don't get that kind of instant feedback if you're doing it one-on-one. Okay. We work it out eventually, but that instant feedback's just like, that's why it works so fast, group work. Works a lot faster than one-on-one, I think. And like both of them are great for those of you who've done both, right? And done both with me. Many of you here have. They're a great support to each other, right? You get some things out of one and some things out of another, right? I'm not saying either one is better than the other, but there is a lot of value to group work, things that you can't get out of the one-on-one, right? Yeah, Sasha's nodding quite intently. It's true, right? This is not a substitute or a lesser version of this. There's actually something very, very powerful when we come together as a group. And I absolutely honor and thank you for showing up and doing this group work, because group work is so important beyond just here, right? Yeah. Right. And it doesn't mean that you don't like your individual sessions either, Ali, right? But the group work, there's something here being witnessed by others and sharing ideas and that with others, rather than just hearing my perspective only, right? There's just much more. So I'd be happy to talk to any of you if you want to do the expansion training too. And I think I'll start, as I said, by just popping an invitation to give me an idea about if anyone does, which start date would work better for them, right? And I'm still fairly open on days. So I'll just kind of give, the week commencing kind of thing. And we'll figure out days when we get a bit closer, whether we stick to this day or possibly change. There are a couple of other options. Okay. Before we finish, I want to just go back to Beth Tomlinson and say, want to say anything now? Is there anything that your heart desires to speak?
No, but I did have a question. If you do the expansion 2, you said it's live. Is there going to be any replays if you have to miss?
Yes, definitely. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Still get recordings that you can watch again, even if you have already been live, or if you missed a session, you'll have the recording for sure. Yes. Yeah. Okay. And with expansion training too, you get because it's the 10 weeks and it's all live, there is included a one-on-one session in the expansion training live as well. So you'll get that. So if you do end up missing a thing and you want to go back on your map or something like that, we can always do a little bit of that together. Okay.
But you're going to start REST in January, is that right?
Yeah. So it just won't be starting at the same. So two things. It won't be on the same day, but it will be running concurrently to REST. And because the mapping process is not something that you'll learn until much later, well, you'll incorporate later on with your clients. I don't specifically take you through the process like I teach you in expansion training. I'll just refer to it, right? But you wouldn't be doing it with clients until later on anyway. So it's fine to run them concurrently, and I don't, that's why I've split it up this way. So expansion training 2 is not a prerequisite for REST. So if you want to just do REST, you can. We won't spend 3 days on mapping like we do in expansion training, but you'll certainly get the maps and you could certainly ask questions about the maps, right? But I won't take you through the process. The other way to do it though is to do REST, get the maps, and then just have 1 or 2 individual sessions on the maps, right? If you wanted to do something that you're more clear on yourself. So there's a number of ways you can cut it. If we don't do the shadow work or whatever, but again, you get to do some very personal excavation. So if you're tossing up between the two, I would definitely say just do REST and we'll figure it out. Okay. And if you want to do both, you can. And if you want to do 2 and then wait, or do rest and then wait, you know, like all those things are all possible. But truly, if it's a one or the other, then just do the rest. It's, you know, it's obviously a lot deeper. We don't do exactly the same things, but I can kind of catch you up.
Okay.
All right. Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question. Very good question. And we can have a proper talk about that, Beth, at some point if you'd like to, and I can show exactly what that would look like. Yeah. I mean, I want to make it the best way for you, and that's why I've decided to I'll just run it concurrently so that if people do want to do it, they can. But yeah, it's all options on the table. Yeah. Okay. Thank you for that question. How about we just pop one word in of how we're feeling or anticipating for the rest of our day, what we're looking forward to, maybe both, what you're looking forward to and how you're feeling right now. And I'm going to follow this chat because I can't. Here we go. Tired and bed. It's late. Yep. Totally. Bed's a good thing. Feeling settled. Looking forward to a nap. So another one, looking forward to bed. Excited, looking forward to a coffee, a walk, and a sit in the sunshine. Yes, I heard you were in Queensland, and then a nap. So we got 3 naps on the table. Yeah, lovely. Yeah, it sounds beautiful. Walks and sitting in the sun. Feeling at peace, but neighbours. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, okay. Yeah, so we've got a bit of a theme going on with neighbours, boundaries, a little bit of anxiety, ready for a rest as well. So there's a bit of there's a nice little theme there about people really wanting to connect to their need for rest, right? And if we can connect it to a need for a rest and rather than a need to give into exhaustion, that's my invitation to you is how can you just say, oh, I have a need for rest, and how can I get replenishing rest? And that's often getting rest before you need it, right? So not going to bed tired, for example, or whatever. Yeah, well, we made everybody sleepy, which I think can be, like for me, it's about helping you connect to the truth of your reality, right? I'm not here to make you feel anything else, even if it's feeling good. I am here to support you to connect to your reality of what your current experience is, so that then you can do something about it. Yeah. So, yeah, so I'll tell you,
I think we're all used to living in sympathetic though. And so when we actually actively calm our nervous system, all we want to do is sleep, because we don't have that normal actual downtime in our day that we should. So
that's right. Exactly. So what the purpose then is that's why those of you who can not just head off and go to sleep because they're exhausted, stay and get more ventral, right? Because then that means that when you've come down from sympathetic, instead of dropping down into collapse and freeze, you're in sympathetic, and I know I'm going to raise my hand, but you come down by going into ventral, and then it's slowly floating down like a feather. For those of you who can stay, right? You float down like a feather, and then you have your nap, right? Rather than dropping like a stone, which is when you miss out on the ventral. Yeah. So sometimes you can't, you're just either you're too ill or too tired, and you just have to drop like a stone, right? We've had a couple of people like that in different times with this in classes. They've said, oh, I'm too tired, I'm going to bed. right? So that's when the stone gets a bit heavier than the, right? It goes faster, it falls faster than the feather. But at any time, if we're able, you have to be able, not overriding, able to stay into this space of ventral that we are co-creating together. And the longer your system can stay in that, then it floats down to a feather and has a nice nap. Okay. So I'm going to leave you with that. It's why I brought in feathers that come through in different ways in this course. Some of you may pick that up, and the feathers are there for a reason, right? They're all sending you little messages. But I like keep that if that image speaks to you, keep that image, right? Okay. Thank you very much for the time that we've had together. I've really appreciated it and enjoyed it. It's been lovely. Thank you all. I wish you all the very best. Sending you love. Bye.